Welcome to another Allar tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be going over on how to create a muzzle flash particle. Not how to implement it, just creating the particle itself. If you already know how to create a particle system, go ahead and skip this part, because this is just going to be a very quick introduction to how to make a particle system for our gun. And it's very programmer art based, which means I'm not an artist, but I still need an asset to show off. So I'm just going to make something quick and dirty. Looks really bad, but for example reasons it works. If you're an artist, then you would spend time at this step making it look pretty. I'm not, so I'm just going to have someone else do that for me later, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'll be going over on how to make this particle system, for those who don't know how. Now, first thing you want to do is, there are different ways to make particle systems. You can either have it basically emit a bunch of small sprites, or you can have a mesh emitter, or you can do a combination of both. Now, just because I wanted something quick and easy, what I did was I went ahead and modeled a muzzle flash in Max, and what that consists of is a plane and 3 more planes, and that was it. So I have a plane here, 3 planes here. That's it. And all these planes, if you look at their unwraps, they all take up the entire UV space. Now I know the texturing looks a little bit weird, but we'll go over why that is in a second. You check out these things, they're all taking the whole UV space. Now, I'll go ahead and close this. Now the textures I used for this, I basically made a sprite sheet. And it doesn't matter of the dimensions of your image or the dimensions of each cell of your sprite sheet, as long as each cell is evenly spaced and precisely placed. Now, I decided to have 8 images, so I split this in 25% chunks. And this is a 512 map, so this 25% of 512 is 128 pixels. So these are 128 by 256, each little cell. But you can make them whatever you want. You can make one big picture, doesn't really matter. But I advise using sprite sheets because then you can get some variations in your particles without trying that hard. And it's easier on texture, memory, and stuff. But at the same time, it requires a lot more work. Like, I textured these very badly, so, but I mean, it still works. Now, I just use this texture as the ejection side, like the side ejections of the flash hider of a rifle. And this is the muzzle flash I'm trying to recreate here. And see these spikes on the left? That's basically the side ejections from the flash hider that's on your standard rifle. Now, some guns have different types of flash hiders, which will cause different amounts of bolts to shoot out at different angles, but they'll generally have a big muzzle flash coming from the front. Unless you have a silencer, then things work differently. But in any case, I have a separate texture here for the main burst, and I split that into 2 because I already only felt like doing 2 variations. The bottom one I googled and modified. The top one I googled and modified a lot, and as you can tell, I'm not very good at arting, but you know, as long as you have what's needed, you can have an artist go back and redo it later. So make sure you have alpha on both these, otherwise your particles will be emitting black rectangles, and that's not fun. So go ahead and save those out. And in Max, if you put them in your materials, you will see your entire texture, but don't worry about that because we will in the Unreal Engine, we will be able to say, hey, only use this cell of the sprite sheet instead of the whole thing. So go ahead and import your textures. I already did. I kind of already have my stuff set up, but for the purpose of this demo, but we'll go over on what I did. So after you input your textures here, I'm going to go ahead and open up my materials, and this material is wrongly set up. Alright, so in order to set up your material, all you do is, if you're using a mesh like I am, you will use the mesh sub-UV, and you will go ahead and plug that into your emissive, and you will plug the alpha into your opacity, And on the bottom, if you click nothing, your material settings should be blend additive and lighting model unlit. And two-sided helps a lot in this case. Not all particles need two-sided. And you will leave everything unchecked down here. Now if you're using actual particle emitters instead of mesh emitters, then you have to set this up differently. And for that, I suggest going through the 3D buzzes particle tutorials available on the UDN site. But for now, if you're just following along, go ahead and stop, model this out, export it, whatever. Now, that's how you create a texture for a particle mesh emitter. I mean, a material, yeah. So if you go back to my other second material for this plaster, it's the same exact thing. Same settings, nothing checked. Goes into the emissive, goes into opacity. Blend additive, unlit, two-sided, that's all there is to it. Alright, now, as I said, if you're doing more advanced particles, there are other sites with lots of good particle tutorials and stuff. This is just quick and dirty implementation of a particle. Now, if you right-click and go New Particle Material, go ahead and name whatever you want your particle system to be named. And if you open it, you should get what's called Cascade, and Cascade is on my Windows being kind of stupid. Hold on. Cascade is Unreal's particle editor, and when you first create a material, you should see something like this, and it's just a particle emitter, and it might be emitting a texture already, depending on if you have a texture selected in your content browser when you click New Particle Emitter. But in any case, you'll have a bunch of particles going upward. If you don't have this for whatever reason, just right click in this big black space here and go New Particle Spread Emitter, and it'll add one for you. That's all there is to it. Now, in order for us to start using a mesh, let's go over how I did the mesh first. I broke the mesh into two parts. My windows are all tiny for some reason. As you can see, I have the ejectors as one mesh, and I have the main burst as another mesh, just like that. And that's just a wireframe, two triangles, not that hard. I did that because if I ever wanted to go back and I want to add more ejectors to the mesh, I can do that, and it's just easier to manage that way. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open up my particle system again. And it's just, sometimes you have this problem where your window gets really, really tiny, but it takes a while to fix that. I don't know what's wrong with that sometimes. Alright, now I have a particle emitter. We have to change this to a mesh emitter. So I'm going to go ahead and right click it and go type data and go new mesh data, and nothing will show because we have not assigned a mesh to it. If we click mesh data and go ahead and click, I'm going to add it on main burst mesh first. I'm going to go ahead and add that, and you still don't really see anything. That's because it's using a material that's basically a spreadsheet and doesn't know how to interpret that yet. So if you click this required section of your particle emitter, also known as the required module, all these little parts are called modules. You'll see that where it says sub UV, we need to change some settings there. And so where it says interpolation method, I'm going to go ahead and choose random. So it takes a random image every time, and you still won't see anything yet. Now this is where sub UVs get pretty cool. If your unwrap takes the entire UV space, you can go ahead and check this and it'll automatically scale your UVs to how you need. And if you remember from our texture, we have two cells, I guess, basically two rows of sprite or texture space. So we're not splitting horizontally, but we do have two cells vertically. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 2 in there, and we should see it. Why are we not seeing it? Alright, when you add a new type data to a particle emitter, you're not going to see it at all at first anyways, unless you click this blue button at the top left where it says restart sim, and that basically restarts your particle simulation and it reloads all your settings and stuff. And right now you'll notice it's taking our our blast texture, and it's just shooting it up. We don't want our muzzle flash to have any velocity, so I'm going to go ahead and right click initial velocity and delete module. Boom. And now it's steady. Now, color over live, that allows you to do some cool fade stuff, but this will be really simple particles, so we're not even going to mess with that. Now, one thing we need to fix here is that for weapons or for muzzle flashes to work correctly, it seems, from my experience, it has to be pointed down the positive y-axis. If you navigate around this little preview here, you'll see the little 3 axis on the bottom left. You want your end result to be pointing down y. So in order to fix that, when you click the mesh data part of your particle emitter, there's an orientation section, and if you choose under axis lock option, you change that to ePal y, it orientates that down the y-axis. Really simple. And that's how that's done. Alright, now that we have that there, we need to be able to have our texture change depending on, well, just randomness, I guess you can say. So if you right click in your underneath your particle emitter and go sub UV sub image index, you will see that it will start spawning it'll keep spawning particles, but you'll see that one of them will be using your other image, and it's just pulling randomly which image to use there, so you can have random variation. And we need to fix the spawn rate, and we have to basically, there's 2 things that you have to change in spawn. Change rate distribution to 1 here, and it will spawn a particle every second. There you go. And you can kind of see how it randomly chooses a texture. Pretty cool stuff. But we'll keep that like that for now, so we can tell what's going on. Now I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of random rotation. And we can do that by rotation, initial rotation. And I'm just 0 to 1 is pretty drastic. I'm just going to change this to like 0.1. And it will kind of give it a little bit random tilt every time one spawned, and it just makes the end result look nicer. You'll see that later. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to right click particle emitter, and I'm going to duplicate emitter. That way I don't have to do the same same stuff twice. And I'm going to click mesh data in my second particle emitter. I'm going to go ahead and load up my muzzle flash triple, and that will give me another ejector. Like, whoa, dog. And as you can see, it's only showing the top half of the text, which is weird, but that's because we need to go back to required under this particle and change our sub UV settings again. For this texture, we had 4 cells across, and we had 2 vertical. So with those settings, you can see our ejectors are now working just fine. And they got a little bit of random rotation too. Not too much though, because you're not gonna, the flash hider won't be doing that much. Yeah, in fact, you should probably lower the randomness there. So there we go. Min max 0 to 0.05. This gives a little bit of rotation, not too much though. And there. Now we have a muzzle flash. Now from experience, this is pretty giant. So I'm gonna go do initial size and expand both min and max. And I'm gonna bring these down to this. Actually, I will show you something about distributions here. This distribution thing under initial size defaults to have a max and min properties, and if you change something like change min to 1, every time a particle is created, it will pull a random number between 1 and 25 for each of these components, and you can see that here. It's changing the size over and over and over again. But if we want something constant, where it's this size, start size distribution, you can click this blue arrow here and go distribution vector constant. And now we can just type in some values there. I'm going to use 2. That's better. I'm going to go back to the initial size on the other one, do the same thing. If you want to learn more about distributions, I recommend, once again, 3D Buzz video tutorials about particles. They're really good, and they teach you pretty much everything you need to know. And I want to make my ejectors a little bit bigger actually. 2 and 3. Oh, that's way too big. 2.2. It's just really a guesswork game now. And as long as it points down Y, it's good. Now there's a little thing we can do. As you can see, the blast particle is always going to be a little bit weirdly angled. We go to mesh data and we can go to camera facing. We can check that box. It's going to do something really weird. So I find that I just go through all these settings here until something matches to what I want. And let me just look at my reference really quick. Alright, for this case, turns out under mesh data, locked axis negative Y, that should work. There we go. And that way it kind of faces the camera a little bit, but it's not perfect, but I feel like it gives it just works kind of in game a little bit better. But you can do really whatever you want. It's all up to you. Now the last things we need to do is we need to click our outside this particle here and make sure, well, actually pretty much good here. So oh yeah, under the required modules we're going to have to check use local space. That way when it updates in space, it'll use wherever it spawned at based on our muzzle flash socket instead of the world space. It's kind of weird, but if you don't check that, weird things might happen. Weird things might not happen, but you'll see in the end. Now that's how we build a particle, and as you can see, it's going to keep looping through a muzzle flash here. Now we're going to have to come back to this and tweak it later after we implement it, so we get it to look right. But for now, that's how we create a muzzle flash particle. Now, if you're an artist or you know how to create better particles, go ahead and feel free to make your own better particle here. This is just a programmer slug, just something that we can show off, not necessarily look good. And next tutorial, I will show you how to implement this for your weapon, so that every time you fire, you will see your muzzle flash. Thank you for watching.